Welcome to the Faces of Africa Pocket Edition, where we dissect and discuss the topics covered in our weekly documentary show, which takes you through the continent's history, cultures, and major issues through exploring great personalities. This week on Faces of Africa podcast, we take you to South Africa. We meet Lee Jardine. He is a fourth-generation Chinese South African who is a martial artist teacher and also practices fine arts. My name is Fathiya Mohammed Noor, and I have here
Kimani Mungai.
Kim, I don't know what you thought about the documentary, but personally, I've always been interested in martial arts. I used to watch Kung Fu when I was a bit young, but this particular one, I think it was so calming to watch, just watching his story and how he's training. What did you think yourself?
Just like you, I think I'm really intrigued by martial arts, be it the Tai Chi discipline, the Taekwondo, the Kung Fu. And I think this interest or intrigue was brought about by the movies we'd consume when we were young in the 90s, 80s. Okay, I'm not an 80s baby, but...
oh, you sure? You're kind of selling yourself already.
Oh, yeah. The Bruce Lee movies and those fancy villains going in duel 1-2. And the hero winning at the end of the scene of the movie was very, very, very interesting.
I'm sure a lot of people actually can just relate to this kind of arts. It's very interesting as much as it came from, the other side of the world. But now coming back to the documentary, I think something that was so interesting to see is that initially Lee's father, who is also a martial artist, wanted him to actually go to school and get what he called a career that is stable. And so he went ahead and studied actuarial science, and he said he failed terribly. What did you think?
Okay, as a story, as our viewers and listeners will go and find out, the story is about Lee Jardine, as you mentioned, who is trying to find his identity in modern day South Africa, especially being a fourth generation Chinese in South Africa. And we can see Lee giving his story of his earlier life, where he wanted to do what his parents or his father in this case wanted him to do, and not finding fulfillment in it.
Right.
But at the end of the story, we finally see him get a new resolution, which is very, very fulfilling.
Yeah. And you see what's so interesting, even when you keep on watching this documentary, Lee, when he's telling us his story, he got married and got divorced, and he was in a very bad time. That really took him to a certain kind of depressive hole, right? But he also talks about how this particular martial, the training really lifted him up out of that situation. That was so interesting, right?
It was very interesting in the way his journey has taken him and has built him over time, and we see him use newfound interest in fine art, and we see him build new relationships with his new schoolmates who have become lifelong friends, his teachers. Can see also him finding new interests and also at some point taking up his dad's job, Lee Jardine, senior, and taking up his training school or dojo.
Yeah.
And we see him getting fulfillment out of that.
Just away from the whole, what he's doing in terms of the fine arts and the martial arts, what do you think is the importance of keeping your heritage? Because, yes, he lives in South Africa, but he's also Chinese. And he's really trying to keep his tradition alive using martial arts. What did you think of that?
I found it very helpful that he's finding resolution in mixing his heritage, Chinese heritage, and also mixing it with his new South African identity and his place in modern day South Africa. And we see this mix and confluence of 2 or more cultures
Right.
in him. And we see how he uses that to better himself and grow himself as an individual, and find fulfillment.
And it was through that made me realize, it's really important for me to not forget also where I came from, which is why I am proud to be a Chinese South African, and Chinese South African is very important. I'm South African, but I'm a Chinese person in South Africa.
For sure. But also I think one of the happy endings in the documentary is that he finds love again. He finds a partner actually in the art school. That was nice, yeah?
As I said, all we witness in his journey is all these obstacles that he's overcome over time, and all his wins. Being a divorcee and later finding love in his family's dojo or training school.
Right.
Is very, very, very fulfilling.
For sure. Okay, I don't know what you've learned out of this documentary while watching it, but for me, passion, persistence, and perseverance. Wow, I loved watching his journey. It just says you can move from a point where you're thinking things can't be going right to now sort of like a happy ending as you keep on moving to your journey. Very inspirational for me.
Martial arts for me is about sharing a culture, but ultimately also wanting to improve people's quality of life in terms of being physically healthier and mentally healthier.
He's finding resolution with first of all with his dad, who initially had told him that he wants him to do something different.
Yeah.
And we end the film, or we go at some point where we see him, or the father, getting satisfaction after his son has taken up his role or his teaching role at their martial school.
Yeah.
And you find that the dad and the son on this kind of a side-by-side, all of them with their own ideas, but on a side-by-side agreeing and coming together and uniting and finding common ground.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Very, very nice way of actually ending the documentary and ending the podcast. Thank you, Kim, for coming on board. That was nice.
Thank you, Fathiya, for hosting me this week.
Yeah.
Very lovely discussion, and I hope our viewers get to enjoy this week's episode.
For sure. Thank you for that. Well, remember, if you want to find this podcast, you can find it uploaded on the CGTN Africa and Faces of Africa YouTube channel on Saturdays. And the documentary will be airing on Sunday on CGTN platforms at 12:30 East Africa time, 17:30 Beijing time, and 9:30 GMT.